Good evening and live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the home of Scarycast. How is everybody doing tonight? We've got part one of our two-part series on Flat Earth Christmas with Mark Sargent. We are recording this. You may be hearing it later, but this is being recorded on the 22nd of December. And we're lucky to have Mark Sargent, one of the true gurus of the Flat Earth with us. Good evening, Mark. How are you?
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me. And I'm doing well. Can't complain for a Sunday.
It's always good to have you here because you're really an interesting guest, and I like your perspectives and everything. So I will tell everybody that I think last night we talked a little bit, and I jotted down some questions, and I kind of put them together for us to talk about it for those that are interested in the flat earth. Now, I am, and I will say, let me get my sheet of paper, a shameless plug for the Flat Earth 2025 conference, which will be September 26th and 27th. It'll be somewhere in Georgia, as far as we know. We're working on that right now. But Mark your calendar, September 26th and 27th for the Flat Earth Conference. That's going to be a wonderful experience, don't you think, Mark?
I do, and I'm excited to get involved with this. You know, we've been doing them pretty much nonstop since 2017, and our lead person down on the East Coast, she decided she was going to take a step back finally. I don't blame her, and so I'm eternally grateful that you're going to get involved, and it's going to be fun. Can't wait.
Listen, I love putting on conferences. I've put on Bigfoot conferences. I've put on UFO conferences. I've put on a number of things, and it's always fun. You meet the most interesting people, and they're normally smart. They're all coming there for a reason. They want to learn. Right. So that's my kind of group of people that want to learn and people that are smart. I'd be around them every day. Don't you agree, Mark?
I absolutely agree. Nothing satisfies me more than an intelligent conversation with like-minded people.
That's great. Well, look, thanks a lot. And I have asked you, since I'm probably spearheading this thing, I have asked you to be our keynote speaker. Yeah. And I never did actually physically ask you, but would you be our keynote speaker? I would love for you to be.
Nothing would thrill me more. It'd be my pleasure to be a keynote speaker at the Flat Earth Conference in 2025.
Okay, that's great. Everybody, you heard it here. I asked him and he accepted. So it's going to be it's going to be wonderful. I've even got a really great artist working on the poster.
Oh, neat.
Oh, he has been a friend of mine for about 8 years. He was a regular at my Comic-Cons and at all the Comic-Cons around here. And then he moved to New Mexico, and he's still drawing. I'll tell more about him. I'll probably even have him on Scarycast as we unveil the new wonderful Flat Earth 2025 conference poster. So anyway, we talked about some topics, and I'm going to review those topics and let you and I discuss them for everyone to enjoy as we head into Christmas. And Christmas is the season of the flat earth this year, don't you think?
I do. I think Christmas and flat earth go well together.
Okay, now, question area number 1. Yeah. The firmament. Yeah. The firmament is discussed in the Bible. Through 1958, it was detailed in the Antarctica article of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right.
When the 1961 Britannica came out, it was nowhere to be found because the International Geophysical Year was July 1st, 1958 through December 31st, 1959, and they took that firmament stuff out.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, talk to us a little bit about the firmament and how does that work?
Sure. Well, if the world is, for lack of a better term, a snow globe, which kind of goes along with Christmas, The we're living in we'll just say a giant dinner plate, right? It doesn't. We're not talking about dinner plate in space. We're just talking about dinner plate. We don't know where it is. And the North Pole would be in the center of the dinner plate, and all the continents would be splayed out around the outside, and then there'd be a dome covering us, right? That would be the firmament. Mentioned in the Bible specifically, I believe that would be Genesis 1, verse 6 through 8, I think, which is that God created a firmament to separate the waters above and the waters below, which is awfully interesting. And it's impenetrable. And it surrounds and we can't reach it. Does it I know you've got some follow-up questions to that, so I won't spoil it. But does it reach it around the edge of Antarctica? I believe so, yes. Do any of the civilian population get anywhere near it to take a picture of it? No. Very interesting, by the way, that the Encyclopedia Britannica would even mention it in 1958, although what was founded in 1958? NASA. And then the Antarctic Treaty was put in place in 1959, and also the Van Allen radiation belts were announced in 1959, which I don't think was a coincidence.
NASA headed by that war criminal himself, Werner von Braun.
Right. Which, by the way, you can look it up. It's not secret information. I would have thought his headstone, his gravesite would have been much more elaborate, but it's not. And you can look it up there. And it shows the year he was born and the year he died, and then it also has a Bible verse on it, which is interesting, for a NASA high tech guy. And it says Psalm 19:1, and I had to look it up. I didn't know what Psalm 19:1 was, and it said, "And the firmament shows his handiwork." And it's like, okay, why is Werner von Braun reaching from beyond the grave to tell people, oh yeah, by the way, the space program may not be what you think it is, and there may be a barrier there, and we can't go past it.
Well. In our next installment, we're going to have a very professional remote viewer to tell us about the firmament and what she sees. And I think that's going to be very interesting.
Me too.
So we're going to have a heck of a show. And it's either December 26th or the 27th, depending on when I can round everybody up. And I will, of course, post that. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun because there's a lot here. There's a lot of confusion all over.
Right.
And you mentioned the Van Allen radiation belt.
Right.
And I just can't help but say a man can't go through the Van Allen radiation belt.
Yeah.
Unless the man is encased in lead.
Right.
And from what I've seen, had they had an inch of lead in that rocket that they sent up, well, couldn't have gotten off the ground because lead's pretty heavy character there.
Aerodynamically, we don't use lead in a lot of things. We use them in bullets. We use them in heavy machinery, as weights, and of course some fishing lures and stuff like that. It's interesting because yes, there's only three things that can stop radiation. Lead, of course, which we use in those lead blankets you wear in a dentist's office. Gold, which is twice as dense as lead. Most people don't know that, but that's because who has that much gold? And water, a whole bunch of water, which is they use in power plants. And yet all those things, because of their weight, you can't put on anything. Forget about a rocket. You don't put them on airplanes. I mean, airplanes are basically just aluminum, a little bit of steel and plastic. And yet none, there's no shielding whatsoever. And they went through the Van Allen belts. And by that, I mean the Americans, because no one else had manned missions ever since then. And they went round trips, right? Multiple times from 1969 all the way up until 1972.
Okay.
No shielding at all. Nobody died. Nobody got radiation poisoning. Nobody even got cancer. There's still, I believe, 4 of them walking around today, even after all this time, Apollo astronauts. So how'd they do it? Right. Van Allen, by the way, the Van Allen radiation belts, he was a NASA scientist that said in the 1959, he says, oh yeah, you should never go up there. Super, super deadly. Never, ever should happen. And yet Kennedy, 1 year later, during one of his famous speeches, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. well, it's like, okay. So all the media went back to Van Allen. It's like, how are you going to do it? And he goes, well, we're just going to go real fast. And it's like, what are you talking about? Some of those belts are pushing 50,000 miles thick, and your best speed is 17,000 miles an hour. That's 3 hours each way, and you have to slow down on the way home. How are you doing it? No one talks about it. No one talks about it. How they got through it. It's like, what shielding you use? Just crickets from NASA or anybody in the space program.
Well, they used aluminum foil or something just
Aluminum,
like it.
yeah. As you know, so the next time you go to the dentist's office, if you don't want to be weighted down by that lead blanket, ask for the aluminum one. See what sort of look they give you. And remember, that's only a second of X-ray, right? That's not cosmic rays if you believe in space. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I pretty much believe that the Van Allen radiation belt is there.
Oh, sure. It might be there, but we're not going through it.
Well, okay. Now, here is my question for you. This is my first deeply probing question. But where is the Van Allen radiation belt? Is it underneath the firmament, or is it above the firmament in the waters? Where is the Van Allen radiation belt?
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple schools of thought there. You could say, if you say that NASA was super clever, they could have just made up the radiation belt. But I don't know. Maybe they did detect high amounts of radiation at a very, very high altitude. Is it inside the barrier or outside the barrier? I'm not sure. Or is it part of the barrier? That could be one of your follow-up questions, which is, what is the firmament made out of? And
well, that actually is my next question of what is the firmament made of? What material? Any clue?
Well, I don't want to necessarily give the cop-out answer and say it's dealer's choice. I mean, it could be any one of a number of things. It could be, a heavy element, a heavy water, electromagnetic field, unified field. It could be, any of those things. However, what I do know is we can't get through it, because from 1958 all the way up until the beginning of 1962, I believe, the United States and then the Soviet Union, who's not around anymore, were doing all their atomic testing straight up. And I knew exactly what they were doing when I read it. It's like, okay, it's a typical guy thing to do. It's like, oh, you see a barrier there. We didn't make the barrier. Can you get through it? Get the cannon. Right. And if that doesn't work, get the missiles and just start hitting it with everything you got. And they were using the first couple shots of the high altitude testing. You can look this up all day long. It's called in Wikipedia, it's high altitude nuclear testing. And the first shots were low megaton. And we're talking back in the late 50s when megaton was a big deal. Nowadays, everybody's got megatons. But back then it was a really big deal. And if you can't bust through something with a megaton weapon, you're not going through it. And so whatever it is, it's that leads into, why is it there at all? And so I try to give people your options, depending on whether you're an optimist or not. And it's like, okay, is the barrier there? Is the firmament there to keep us in? Because we're a box of kittens that should be protected, right, from what's outside of here? Or is it there to keep us from getting out because we're a box of scorpions that never should be let out into whatever's beyond this world? And it's like, well, if you follow science fiction movies and books and everything, most notably The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original one.
By the way, stop. We love the original with Michael Rennie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. And you know what? One of the greatest actresses of all time never gets remembered for being the co-star, and that's Patricia Neal.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a great, fantastic, way ahead of its time. And the concept was wonderful, which is whoever built this place saw that we were thinking about creating space travel. Remember, this was before NASA. And they came in and said, yeah, you're not going anywhere. You guys are awful. I mean, there's that some of the movies and television shows got it right, which is, okay, do you really want to let what we do here spread to other places, regardless whether you think that there's a solar system or not? And I have to agree with them. So when they did the Keanu Reeves remake, it's like, yeah, Remember that the ending of that movie was way darker than the first. They basically sent us back to the Stone Age. It's awful.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was wonderful. And by the way, just to finish up on Patricia Neal,
Yeah.
we are in the anniversary of one of the greatest horror films of all time, and that is Ghost Story, the Peter Straub novel that was made with John Houseman, Fred Astaire, all those great old stars, and it starred Patricia Neal in her I think that was her last movie role. She was just grand in it. I just happened to see that fly along on Facebook. I get more news from Facebook than I do from the news channels.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you that to find out what's going on. But anyway, yeah, The Day the Earth Stood Still. That is a great movie to remind us of about Klaatu, that weird looking robot, and Michael Rennie just standing there in Patricia Neal's house, just calmly saying, well, I'm from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So weird.
It's a wonderful movie, and a wonderful think piece on what we should be doing. Even back then, we were criticizing our own civilization, and this is an American film, and I enjoyed it. It was wonderful. So again, when the Keanu Reeves version came out years and years later, it's like, what are you guys going to do with this one? And they made the robot way bigger, and at the end, they did save some of the life forms. They didn't do much with us, though. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was, but they were great films. They really were.
Yep.
And now I've got a question that just popped up into my head, just like a UFO would pop up in the sky.
Yes.
Are you ready for this, Mark?
Oh, I'm going to try.
Where do the UFOs come from? If we are encased in a firmament,
right,
where do the UFOs come from?
I believe, because I've been asked that for 10 years. It's like, okay, where does that change your opinion on UFOs? It only changes my opinion on where they're from, not that they exist. Just for the record, years ago when I was in Colorado, had the wonderful chance of getting a tip from somebody to get some night vision binoculars and start looking at the skies, and just blew my mind away. This is way before I got into flat Earth, years before I got into flat Earth. And the sky is crawling with things constantly. And it's because the people don't understand that the ships that are up there, that they're just like cars, meaning they don't have to have their headlights on to work like our cars, right? You can have drive around without your headlights. They work fine all day. And since they run on silent engines, they could be flying right over you. You're never going to know it. The only reason we even look up is because you hear a plane or a jet or a helicopter or whatever it is. So to your question, are they with us or are they outside this place? I kind of tend to think that they're with us, that they're with the that they're trapped in here with us, that they can't get out either, and they're just remnants. They're just older versions of us. Do they? I think I mentioned to you last time we talked. One of the greatest UFO sightings of all time was 1561 Nuremberg, which you can look it up on Wiki all day long. It was two giant space aircraft carriers flying over Nuremberg, Germany, doing battle in a time when science fiction wasn't even a concept. So they thought it was a religious event, but they sketched the whole thing down and put it in their newspapers, and it's gorgeous in full color. It's absolutely wonderful. So I think the UFOs are in here with us. They're not from Mars and Jupiter and Venus and all these other places. They're just older civilizations where the remnants are not allowed to live on the surface. They are probably subterranean. I mean, they could be interdimensional, I guess.
Well, you bring up a point, and I've always thought, since I started contemplating the flat Earth, that the UFOs and all that are below us.
Right.
And they come in. Now, I will say this.
Yeah.
When we hit the Flat Earth 2025 conference,
yeah,
I'm going to have my buddy Les Durant there, and he is going to show everybody how to take pictures of UFOs.
Cool.
I mean, and this is an important question that we want to discuss at the conference. I guess my approach is, because I have run a lot of academic conferences, I pose well before a conference, I pose a list of questions that we want to identify. Of course, speakers like yourself and everybody else are going to get to talk about what they want to.
Mhm.
But I do want us to focus on some of these questions because I think they're really important. You okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I want you to talk about what you want to talk about because it will be interesting
Mhm.
and informative. But I also want everybody to pick a question or two and try to talk about that. And I think the UFO question, it seems as though there's a lot of research now that's saying there are holes down there in the ice and the UFOs are coming out from them and whatever. I don't know, but I'm going to do some research as well. And so it's going to be fun. I mean, it's really going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. And that's one of my approaches to producing a conference, because I think a conference is there to answer questions. If it's a
Right.
purely academic conference, like I have run about 8 of them before,
Mhm.
or the ACM, the Association of Computing Machinists, which is one of the 2 top research organizations in the computing world.
Mhm.
I was the program director for 2 of their conferences, and I mean, that's what I did, and everybody liked the idea that we did our talks, but then we also tried to look at these issues to maybe grow our field. And I think that is a scientific approach, and I hope everybody's going to like my scientific approach to this flat Earth thing. I think a little science is good. Be careful now. The scientists can go a little bit crazy on you. Like they don't want to look at the moon landing footage
Right.
and see that there are spots where there should be shadows and there are not. Nobody seems to they want to ignore obvious defects in that footage, Mark.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah, they the and why it is a tough pill to swallow, because the pinnacle of science, the front man of science is NASA. Always has been since they were created in 1958. I'm sorry, 1959. Well, no, 1958. The no 59, whatever. So the NASA was the when Apollo happened, it seemed like a good idea at the time, which was, America was unstoppable in the early 1960s. The rest of the world was still trying to pick up, pieces of rubble left over from World War II and rebuild their infrastructure, and we were barely touched, with the exception of Pearl Harbor. And so doing a space program, real or not, was a smart move in the short term. Is like, I can imagine the meeting. It's like, let's do something. The American Empire, the greatest empire in the history of the world was the Roman Empire.
Yes,
However,
it was.
the greatest show on earth, that's us. And we haven't been doing it for that long in relative terms. And so to go to the powers that be, it's like, why don't we go to the moon? Are we really going to the moon? Doesn't matter. Let's say we're going to go to the moon. We've got the tech to fake it. Let's do it. They didn't think about long term, which was how well would the footage age, especially when the digital era came out and the internet was born and things like that. It's like, okay, now that everybody's got Photoshop and filters galore, and they can open up every image you can think of, and they can find the flaws that you were completely invisible before. Looking at it, is Apollo has aged badly. Not only has the images, the still shots have aged badly, the video has aged badly, but the technology itself has aged badly, mostly because they were too scared to do it again. They barely got away with it in 1972. That was the last mission, and then after that, and I've tongue in cheek said, if somebody came to me with a dump truck full of money, it's like, Mark, we'll give you $10 billion. Just for you, if you can help us fake this, the next, space mission, the next moon mission. And I'd be like, get that truck of money out of here. I don't even want to see it, because I don't think I could do it, because it comes down to the weakest link. So whenever I see stuff like Artemis and the whole Elon Musk thing, it's like, oh yeah, they just we've been kicking the can down the road for decades now, and nobody cares because they just believe that it's like, oh, well, we just postponed it. Oh, we just postponed. It's really because I've been hearing that whole postponement argument since the Carter administration. That's how far back it goes. Everybody, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Obama, all those guys, they all said this thing, we're committed to going back to the moon. And all of a sudden, oh, we're going to kick the can down. Oh, the administration changes.
No, it's we're going to wait a minute. We got a few things to work out, but we'll get there. That's exactly what they're saying. Don't you agree?
Yes. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. There's some kinks. There's a few things here and there. And I knew they were in trouble when because the Artemis, which is the new moon mission, when Artemis was announced, and they just a couple of years ago sent a unmanned capsule supposedly around the moon, and the footage was horrible. It was grainy. I mean, they were supposedly only 50 miles from the moon's surface, and yet we were taking better pictures of the moon from here, 250,000 miles away, if you believe that story, than they were at point blank range. And you could say, well, is the transmission? It's like, well, okay, so what happened when you got back, right? When the probe came back, did you get the raw footage? No one would talk about it. So, and then Artemis.
And really, what speaking of footage,
yeah.
Why is it that all of that original footage has been destroyed or recorded over? Why is that?
Oh, because you don't want people doing a deep dive into the original Apollo footage. I know what you're talking about, which is all, again, the average person doesn't know. The original Apollo archives are all gone. They're all gone. So nobody can investigate them. No one can check them out like a library book or copies of them. Remember, it's all digital nowadays. It's not like you're going to get the originals. The originals should have been converted to digital. And that's what they were afraid of. They did not want anything to convert to digital because then it goes beyond their control. So that way they say, oh no, the originals were destroyed before they got a chance to be converted to digital archives. That way no one can just, take a flash drive or whatever it is and download whatever they need and take it back home. That's the problem in that the internet misses nothing as a hive mind. All it takes, and you've seen this with some of the original Apollo footage, the photographs that got out there, all it takes is a nerd at 3 a.m. in his underwear in the middle of Nebraska to find something that nobody caught. And it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. That shadow shouldn't be there. That rock shouldn't be there. Where are the stars?
There should be a shadow. And why isn't there?
Right. And that's why you get rid of as many original archives as well. And then you tell every other country, because there's supposedly 5 or 6, I can't remember what it is now, it might be 6 countries with launch capability. No one's even tried to go back to the moon. It's not that the Americans went and then stopped going in 1972, which is a long way in the rearview mirror right now. It's that China and the Soviet Union and the Europeans and the Japanese and the Indians, none of them even made an attempt. No one even talked about going to the moon. That's the part that blows me away. Where it's like, oh yeah, this crew is going to be going to the moon, in 2 years. Like, really? When is that story coming out? It's never ever happened. In fact, I pick on Elon Musk as much as I can because he's a complete fraud. Which is, you guys want to look up something fun? Look up the Dear Moon project from 2017. That's one of my favorites, which was because I was living in Canada at the time. Elon wasn't even on my radar. And then all of a sudden he comes out and says, oh, I'm going to take a space bus, otherwise known as a space shuttle. We don't have a space shuttle program anymore, by the way. I'm going to take a space shuttle and take a bunch of artists, and we're going to spin around the moon. We're not going to land, and we're going to have people they're going to paint, and we're going to have influencers and stuff like that. There's 10 people, and it went nowhere. And the contract finally ran out this year, and they quietly just said, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to do the Dear Moon project. It's really 7 years, and you quietly just swept that thing under the rug. No one's going back. They just kicked the can down the road last month. They said, yeah, I know Artemis 2 is thinking about doing a manned thing in 2025. Now it's going to be 2027. They just keep kicking it, and everybody, all the space guys, kind of like the Star Wars fans, no offense to the Star Wars fans necessarily, but keep wanting them to make good content. All the NASA fanboys, it's like, I've asked them, it's like, when are you guys going back to the moon? And they just look at me starry-eyed. It's like, soon. We're going back soon. Like, no, you're not. But you have this.
We're going soon. You just watch us. You just watch us. That's what you need to do. And then they don't do anything.
Yeah, they don't do anything, and it has not looked well for NASA. We're paying NASA what, over $70 million a day to do what exactly? You're not doing anything, and yet, again, Elon, it's like, oh no, we're going to do the Orion project. We forget about the moon. We're going to go to Mars. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't even solve the
okay.
moon.
Now I have got to stop you there because you said we are going to Mars, because I have now seen footage in the crevices of the internet about our 3 trips to Mars.
Oh, you mean the probes?
No. Live astronauts. Now, no, I'm just saying I have seen footage in some cracks and crevices of the internet.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to think. I mean, you got to get through the Van Allen radiation belt. And I mean, that might be what the firmament is the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe, I don't know. We don't know.
But at that point, you still, the reason why Mars is impossible is, again, even if you believed you could go to Mars, which I personally don't, because the solar system is just lights on a ceiling. You're just looking at a planetarium, just images. But I treat it the same way why they were never going to solve the robot problem. If I have to see every freaking year, somebody's like, oh, we're going to have humanoid robot servants here anytime. And it's like, no, you're not. That we'll do the robot thing first, and you'll see why it applies to Mars, right? You're old enough to remember the Terminator franchise, right?
Yeah.
The Terminator. No one even addressed what powered those things until the 3rd movie. And then they said, oh yeah, by the way, there's 2 atomic redundant reactors in the chest of these robots. And if one of them fails, it detonates with a kiloton level blast. And that is the worst idea ever. That means all I have to do is kill one robot and it wipes everything out in a square mile area around it, including other robots. And then it turns into a chain reaction. It's a terrible, terrible idea. And they proved that at the end where, he sacrificed himself and blows up the entrance door to the military bunker. You're never going to solve the robot problem because you're never going to solve the power problem. Our batteries are limited. There's only so much we can do with battery technology. And plus not mention the balance issues. It just does not work. Come on. The best you can do is the vacuum robot, one of those Roombas I got over here in the corner. And even those have problems with chair legs and cords, right? And these things have been around for quite a while now. Mars, same sort of thing. If you could even do it, because you can't solve the fuel problem. Even if you had the fuel to go there, it's like, oh, we've sent probes there. We can send it. It's like, oh, okay, fine. Let's say you can. It's a one-way trip. No one's going to do it because it's just bad PR. Even if you could send some people, you're basically sending them, you're going to turn Mars into a headstone. That's all you're going to do. They're going to land there. They're going to transmit back. It's like, well, going to die soon. Bye. It's like, why are you sending them? There is no return trip, even if you believed you could go to Mars. And so the fantasies that we've been throwing out there to the general public, all the things you want to promise them, auto driving cars, same sort of thing. Even your best, who said it the best? Mercedes. They said, yeah, we can do auto driving cars. Only if you're in stop and go traffic and you're in the middle of a whole bunch of other cars, you're going really, really slow speeds. Yeah, then fine. You can turn it on and you're fine. But as soon as that baby gets up to cruising speed, turn it off. Turn it off, because it relies on the infrastructure of the roads, the conditions of the roads. And you're old enough to drive around certain parts of this country. There's a lot of crappy roads here. That's what it's based on. It's camera systems looking at the roads. So no.
Excuse me, Mark. Sounds like you've been up to the mountains of North Carolina where I grew up, talking about those crappy roads. Oh, come on.
An island. I'm telling you right now, everybody knows this. Look, the guys that paint, you're betting your life on the guys that paint the lines on the roads. That's what it comes down. That's all the camera systems do. It's like, hey, do I see a line? Oh, good. Course correct. Oh, hey, something wrong with that line. It's screwed up and going into the bushes. I don't know what to do.
Oh, Mark, come on. We don't. There's so many roads up there in the mountains of North Carolina that don't even have lines.
Right. Right. The system does not know what to do with it. It is a horrible, horrible time. Every car driving company right now is having this off. In fact, I'll give you a quick story. Like 5-6 years ago, they ran one of the early before, I think it was before Tesla. They were doing a self-driving thing in Phoenix, downtown Phoenix. You have your best shot in a city because there's lots of structures and you can, the cameras can look at different things. Hits a lady in a crosswalk, kills her, right? Who's the big problem with that is who's responsible? Who pays the insurance for something like, remember, insurance companies don't want to pay it. So is it the insurance company of the car? Is it the insurance company of the auto driving system? Is it the software that's backing the system? Is it the guy who's sitting in the passenger seat reading his book? You don't know. And that is never going to get sorted out. Right now, the old ways work the best, which is you and I get into a little fender bender, we exchange cards, we figure it out, it goes on its way. Self-driving cars is a nightmare. Oh, I hate it.
Well, that's true. There are so many dreams. The ultimate dream, I think, was in the Jetsons. You remember
There you go. Perfect.
And it was Rosie the robot. She could do anything.
Yes.
I don't think we can do that.
I never understood why Rosie was an older, overweight robot with an East Coast accent. Why?
She was priceless.
She was. She didn't make any sense to me. It's like, why didn't you make a hot robot? It's like, well, it's 1960s. It's a kid's show. It's like, oh, okay, I guess.
It was the Jetsons yes, was truly way ahead of its time, not because of the futurism, but just the fact that we got to see some situations that are ridiculous, and it made us all, it made me think. I mean, I wasn't that dumb as a little kid. I'll never forget when me and my dad, I'm not going to say how old I am, but me and my dad were watching transmissions from the moon.
Sure.
Neil Armstrong.
Yep.
And they were doing real time. Neil Armstrong talks, NASA talks, Neil at NASA, Neil, NASA, and so on.
Right.
And I looked at my dad. My dad was a smart man. He had a high school degree. He became a staff sergeant, and he was in charge of communications on the Burma Road over there in Southeast Asia during World War II. I mean, he was a smart guy to get that position. And I said, Daddy, the moon is, from what I understand, about 250,000 miles away. That's what we were told.
Right.
250,000 miles away. Maybe it's a little farther. So I said, but Daddy, it takes time for signals to get 250,000 miles from out there to down here. Right. Why is it going back and forth like they're one room apart?
Right.
And he thought about it for a minute with all of his knowledge of radios. He said, son, I really don't know what's going on there. I never thought about that. I said, I bet a lot of people didn't think, because it's like they saw this and they said, oh, that's great. And they never stopped, because I was the bad kid. I was always asking those kinds of questions, and I still do. But Mark, I've learned to keep my mouth shut and not ask those questions.
Well, no.
And I don't. But now with you, I'll ask them about the flat Earth, because I like your answers. And
the transmission thing when you were a kid, that's a perfect question, because it's not everything's wrong with it. It's not just the technology that was used. It is it's the distance. It's there should absolutely be a time delay between.
Well, now I've had recently some people tell me that it would have only taken 3 seconds. And I simply said, please prove that. Show me the documentation.
Yeah.
And then they get mad and turn around and leave.
They're going from the raw speed of light at 186,000 miles a second, right? Both ways. But what they're not talking about, and I talked about this years ago, which was the power needed on the moon side to get that done. Remember the VHF transmitter, and you can look this up all day long. They photographed it to death. Just a standard VHF transmitter that's running off what essentially is a car battery. That thing has a range maybe of 50 miles, maybe on a good day. And yet This thing, remember, this is analog days. This thing is pumping out not just audio transmissions. It's pumping out 10 frames of color video a second from this thing, and it's bouncing off supposedly the module that's in geostationary orbit above them, and that thing is pumping it back. So it's a moving target hitting a moving target. And by the way, how are they lining up, pointing at the Earth perfectly from that distance? I mean, if you've shot anything, it'd be like trying to line your scope on something that was 30 miles away, right? And we're talking even with the best scopes, you wouldn't be able to do it. You just could not. And remember, because if you're off even by the tiniest millimeter, you're in a whole different country. And yet they're hitting Houston perfectly. It was perfect two-way communications. It was perfect video transmission, and there was no delay. And they did not have the amps to do it. They did not have the power to do it. And it drives me insane that the average person, why it's same thing with the spacesuit, which we can talk about later. The reason why they got away with it is because the average American, forget about the rest of the world, or let's just say Americans, the average Americans don't know physics. They don't know general science. And granted, I know I've been accused of bashing science on a regular basis. That's because science takes it too far, and they go into their own religion, which is called scientism, right? But
not Scientology, but scientism.
Scientism, which is basically science. Neil Tyson's comment where he goes, "Science is right whether or not you believe in it," which is when we put our stamp on it, that's all it is. That's. I mean, come on, we saw that during the whole pandemic thing. Probably another discussion for another day.
Oh yeah. You remember those 8 doctors that got on there at the very beginning and said, "This is ridiculous. You know, you don't need this. You know, take your vitamins and stuff." And just try to stay clear of people that are sick. Boy, those guys, all of a sudden, they were gone.
Yeah, they were shot down. Yeah. So, but the average American does not know anything about physics at all. And so if that's the case, then you can get away with almost murder. And so they would say, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're transmitting." It's like no one wants to talk about radio frequencies and the amount of power that's needed. The spacesuit doesn't make any sense in a vacuum. It should just absolutely go rigid and tip over. It explodes and they should die. No one wants to talk about it. The little things like the feats of strength that you never ever saw. Remember, it was supposedly 1/6 Earth's gravity on the moon. So an 180-pound man would weigh 30 pounds, which would mean he could do all sorts of fun. And these guys were fit. And yet you never saw feats of strength. You should have been able to lift that buggy with one arm. You should have been able to leap and, amazing things, they should have done physically. Never ever saw it. Not to mention the cavalier attitude. The big part that bugged me, it's going to sound petty, but the big part that bugged me about the Apollo astronauts is when they were there, they talked like airline pilots talk to the passengers. Right. They very matter of fact, and grant the airline pilots are they're taught to talk to the people in a very calm and soothing voice. Right. We're cruising 25. I know we just hit some turbulence. But everything's really, really low key. On the moon, when you get there, if you're an astronaut, there's only one thought that should be going through your head. Oh my God, that's the Earth. I hope I don't die.
How am I going to get to that little dot in the ocean and splash down and pray? I mean, and I loved it. They would get them. Well, this is only 30 feet from where they were supposed to land. Aren't they good?
Oh, I got one more for you. Do you have any friends that scuba dive? Or you know any people that have scuba dived?
Yep.
Perfect. Scuba divers, all they care about. That's if you guys know anything about scuba diving, when you're down there, all you care about is the air in your tank. You got a big gauge and you're staring at it constantly. How many minutes of air I have left? And when you get down to single digits, like 9 minutes, 8 minutes, you're heading back up, right? That's all you care about. Do you know who never cared about their air gauge ever? The astronauts. For whatever reason, when they were walking around there, I never heard an audio thing. It's like, well, we only got 16 minutes of air left and we're like 2 miles away from the capsule. We should think about heading back. No one ever talked about it. It's like they had unlimited air at all times. And of course, if you're talking from a production value, that's exactly what you do, because you don't want to time and date stamp when you say this thing, because I know why they did it, is because you don't want to be caught in an area where all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have 15 minutes of air left. And then if your editing goes wrong, someone's going to pick up on that. It's like, wait, didn't you say 15 minutes over here? But over here, now you say you got 12. And boy, there was like 10 minutes of time between those two things. So they just never brought it up ever. And it drove me insane because, again, the average person doesn't know physics. Like the backpack on their back, not the magic backpack that they had on the, remember, they weren't tethered to anything. Not only could it do heating and cooling and carbon dioxide filtering, and stop the vacuum of space from getting the suit to explode, but apparently had the ability to produce unlimited air. And if that technology was available in the 60s, it would revolutionize scuba diving because no one would have to worry about recharging their tanks on a regular basis. Never got brought up. No one ever talked about it. All we knew was at the end of 1972, they said, oh yeah, Apollo 17, that's it. We're not going back. Good night, everybody. Roll credits. That was it. Nobody ever went back to the moon, including the Americans, by the way. Sorry, one more thing, because I know you're a sci-fi fan. This is the part that bugged me. Why it didn't age well? In the 1970s, there was a wonderful British sci-fi show called Space 1999.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I enjoyed
Martin
that.
Landau and Barbara Bain.
Perfect. And that show was right spot on in that the producers of that show said, oh, hey, 25 years from now, because remember, it was made in the mid-1970s, we will probably have a working moon base in 1999. And that's our jumping off point. That's where the show starts. Boy, that didn't age well, because in 1999, 25 years after Apollo was over, we hadn't done anything. And then you go another 25 years. Now it's been 25 years since that show even fictionally started. We still haven't done anything. So I ask any of the trolls or anyone's listening, when we going back? When are the Americans doing anything? I mean, what, you don't think that China wouldn't have a vested interest in going, or any other country showing up when the Americans went in the Sea of Tranquility and knocking over our flag accidentally? No one wants to talk about it.
Well, all I got to say is I hope Elon gets there, and I hope he sticks a Century 21 flag in there and claims the Earth for his real estate company. I think it'd be great.
Can I do 60 seconds against Elon Musk? Can I?
Yeah, sure.
All right, Elon Musk. You want my big problem with him is he gets credit for doing nothing. If you guys remember the wonderful movie The Founder, which was the Ray Kroc story about with Michael Keaton, on how Ray Kroc basically took over McDonald's, kicked the founders out, rewrote the charter to make himself the founder. Elon has done that with multiple companies. He would have done it with PayPal, except they kicked him out because it's like, oh no, you suck, you're terrible. I've had people come up to me. It's like, he started Tesla Motors, and then they show me entries. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. No, what he did was he kicked the original Tesla founders out, and then during the lawsuit, because they sued him for kicking him out, the one of the conditions, like he settled, but one of the conditions was, hey, I have the ability to rewrite the company charter. And if you don't know what that is, that's the origin story of your country, of your company. And so he went in and said, oh no, he wrote it to where he was one of the original co-founders of Tesla. He absolutely was not. He didn't form PayPal. He didn't do Tesla. He didn't save the Puerto Rico power problems after the hurricane. He didn't save those kids in the cave with a mini submarine. He didn't found. You wait. There will be like 2 or 3 years from now, people will say that he invented Twitter, even though it's like it's not even called Twitter anymore. Why? Because he bought Twitter and then he renamed it X. And SpaceX is just an offshoot of NASA. That's all it is. A black hole of money. It is a government endorsed program. That's all it is. The only reason they call him the richest man in the world, sorry, one more thing, is because, you want to know why he's the richest man in the world? Because Tesla stock is one of the most valuable stocks in the world, because it's part of the green initiative. People went green. All these idiots bought, you don't own an electric car, do you?
No.
Oh, thank God. All these idiots bought electric cars, which are so limited, and there's so many things they can't do. Not to mention they catch fire when they're submerged in even like 6 inches of water. Don't get me started on that. And yet people, because of that, people just start investing. Well, if we're going to invest in a green technology, Tesla's got to be pretty much close to the top of the list. And so people just throw gobs and gobs of money at his stock. Yes, he has a huge amount of money in Tesla stock, but that's not his money. Came from all the investors. He didn't, not this self-made bill. You know, it's not like Jeff Bezos, where all of a sudden it's like, hey, free shipping, everybody give me money, and it worked, right? Or Bill Gates with Microsoft. He became the richest man in the world for nothing, for doing nothing, because he was in the right place at the right time. Ugh, drives me nuts.
Okay. All right. There's your tirade on Elon Musk. I think he's a real interesting character. And
sure, he's interesting, but he's badly written. Meaning, it's what you just said there. He's a character. He's tied to the Trump thing, but come on, he was a DeSantis guy. He was backing Ron DeSantis until DeSantis dropped out. Then he pivoted, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to give Trump $150 million. Can I hang out in the White House for a while? Who wouldn't? If you gave me $150 million, it's like, you can do pretty much whatever you want.
Okay, you'll give him a bedroom in your place.
I will. It's like, you want to snuggle on the couch? Yeah, you bet. No, I wouldn't. No, because he's I'm sorry. And sorry, combination. One more thing. They call him the smartest man in the world. It's like, oh no. First off, he has Asperger's. He has a stammer. I see him get lost in thought. That whole pause that he does when he talks. And it's like, it's like, oh, he must be just lost, and and all these different things. No, he's just freaking lost. I mean, not like Biden lost, but he's lost. Don't give me this crap that he's one of the smartest men in the world. Sorry.
It's funny. I've got a friend.
Yeah.
And he's got one of those problems. He's a great guy. He's like a paranormal geek. And that's why he and I have been friends for years. And for a while, he would, I would make a comment, and then it would be like 30 seconds before he would answer. And I kept thinking, God, he must be thinking about weird stuff and just all this stuff. And I found out that he's got Asperger's or something.
There you go.
And, and so I just know to wait 30 seconds. And no, it's just very interesting. The whole dynamics. I mean, we've traded Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for Donald Trump, Vance, and Elon Musk. Yeah. I mean, it's just wonderful.
By the way, don't think that there's a coincidence there. By the way, not knocking. I don't know. I saw Hillbilly Elegy. The J.D. Vance movie, which was interesting because it was made long before he got into politics. The guy that groomed him for politics was a guy named Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel was Elon's boss. Peter Thiel is basically the mastermind behind PayPal. PayPal, for those of you who don't know, PayPal, the whole reason it was even created was that eBay needed a default electronic payment system. So once PayPal got up and running, it was like, oh yeah, it's solid now. eBay bought them, and Peter Thiel made a ton of money. And so did Elon Musk, because even though he was kicked out, he owned shares in the original IPO of PayPal, if I'm not mistaken. But Peter Thiel took J.D. Vance under his wing, and he was grooming him to be a politician. Because, as you know, politicians are bought and sold like baseball cards. And he was the guy. So he would have been the guy that called up Trump's people. And that's why, you want to know why he's vice president? It's Peter Thiel. Look it up. Thiel, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting. That's an interesting guy. In fact, too interesting to be in politics. That, if you get what I mean. He's one of the puppet masters. He will never be a puppet.
Okay. Anyway, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think our first group of questions have really borne fruit. They really have. We've had some interesting talks here. Good. My next question, and I know you're going to love this, is the Tower of Babel.
Yep.
Talk to me about the Tower of Babel and start trying to remember that conversation we had last night. It was so fascinating. Remember, I said, stop, don't talk about it anymore. Save it for tomorrow night.
I love that story. It is one of the most underrated stories in the Bible. I'm really surprised that no one has turned it into, at the very least, an hour episode on a sci-fi television show, or perhaps a movie, which is in Genesis. And you got to wonder where the inspiration, who wrote it, because, this predates us, which is there was a civilization that was created before ours that was perfect, unified in every way. They didn't have multiple languages. They had high tech abilities and self-awareness, and they were unified as a people. And the story goes is that they figured out where they were. Now, they didn't mention Flat Earth by name, but they had an idea. Remember, this is an intelligent group of people that said, hey, you know what? We're pretty sure we can reach heaven with a bridge or a road. All we have to do is build it right here. I mean, the thing must have been massive in scale, and it must have, can't imagine the resources that it must have consumed. And the story goes that they, it's like, yep, we're gonna go meet God for ourselves. We're gonna see if we can reach it. Of course, why wouldn't you? This kind of reminds me of the story of Masada. You remember that Jewish stronghold where absolutely could not reach it, and the Romans like, yeah, all we have to do is build a really big road, and slope it up. We'll make it, and they did. That's exactly what they did, and it's like scary when you look at the tech that even the Romans had. But imagine that, but orders of magnitude higher. So they're building this road or tower to heaven, the Tower of Babel or Babel or whatever you want to call it. And the story goes is that God sees this, after a while, and he looks down and is like, man, this is not going well at all because they're going to make it. And that ruins the whole thing. And I think they were that particular civilization was made too perfectly. So God all of a sudden it's like, okay, here's where we're going to go. We're going to divide all you people up. You have this language. You have this language. Scatter, 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 and wipe out the tower. And remember, there's no remnants of this tower anywhere to be found. And there would have been even now. I mean, come on, the pyramids are still around, and that was just basically a bunch of building blocks compared to this thing. And that was it. That it was basically God hitting the reset button or a soft reset and redoing the whole thing. And what I found was interesting, again, it's an interesting story in the Bible, but no pastor ever talks about this, is if it's a globe, where exactly was that tower going? Because remember, if it's a globe, you're talking about toothpick on an orange that's spinning around in multiple directions going around the solar system. What heaven is it going to? Now you can say, oh, well, the people were delusional. I go, really? All of them? The entire civilization as a unit were mad? They were insane? They were completely wrong in their science? Or did they realize when they were in a snow globe that's like, oh yeah, all we have to do is build this toothpick thing up to the ceiling, and then we'll go to work. Maybe we can.
Well, no. Let me tell you, this is a little joke here. Yeah. No, what happened is Neil deGrasse Tyson was backward reincarnated, and he was there, and he was telling them what to do.
Nice.
Go Neil.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. By the way, he's in hindsight, now that I've been doing this for 10 years, he has helped us more than he's hurt us. Meaning, there was this wonderful line where he was talking. I can't remember what he was talking to a group of students, and he was on stage and he was criticizing the Red Bull jump from a few years back, that as being scientifically dishonest. Because Red Bull, they went up to like 130,000 feet with one of their guys and with all their logos, and he jumped from the edge of space. And Neil's like, the edge of space at 130,000 feet. He's going, and they used a wide angle lens, and he called him out on it. He goes, look, all these wide angle lenses, similar to the peephole lens in a hotel room, like makes everything curved so you can see more. And he's going, yeah, it's a wide angle lens. The curvature of the Earth from that height wouldn't even exist. In fact, at that height, everything would be absolutely flat. Which again, I find interesting because I cannot tell you the amount of people that have written me or called me or told me in person that they saw the curvature of the Earth from an airplane. The airplane doesn't even hit 40,000 feet. So if Neil Tyson says it's tabletop flat at 130,000 feet, what exactly are you seeing? And what I try to remind people, if you're into Orwell at all, the whole 5 lights, 4 lights thing and how conditioning is. I'm not calling them liars, the people on planes. It's not that they see the curvature. It's that they want to see the curvature. If you are told over and over growing up that the world is a curve, you know, if you told that it's you're living on a ball, eventually when you look out there, you're going to convince yourself it's a ball. And like all of us that got into flat earth, and then when we got down, you know, close to the ground and we started shooting long distance, whether it be photography or lasers or whatever, we couldn't find it. That was the problem. We were looking, it's like, oh, well, we should be able to measure it. I mean, science says it's 8 inches per mile. So therefore we should be able to measure it on a clear day, and we don't. So yeah, Neil, good for him. He has helped us more. I have sent people that video clip of him on stage so many times, and I even call, you know, I try to grind their gears a little bit. I go, hey, so Neil Tyson, he's your high priest of science, right? He's one of the biggest media scientists in the world, if not the biggest. Is he wrong? Right? Because he's got a PhD in astrophysics. Is he wrong? And I've actually had people, you know, that don't even have a bachelor's degree say, well, yes, and he doesn't represent us. I go, oh, okay, good. You know, tell you what, you contact him, let him know, and then maybe we'll get a revised answer. Get nothing.
Okay. Yeah, his PhD in astrophysics is from Columbia University.
Right.
It's a heck of a place to have a PhD from.
Yep. It took him quite a while to get it. And he was on the wrestling team.
And listen, I'm just real proud that mine's from North Carolina State, and I think that's better than Columbia.
Well, there you go.
But that's just me, and I don't know. But yeah, boy, you know, they just don't take crap on anything from NC State. Their first answer for everything that you say is no. Now, what were you talking about? That's the way, and I learned. That's why I learned, and that's why nobody knows if I believe in the flat Earth or not.
Right.
I don't know if I do or not. That is my training at NC State. You don't know.
Right.
You investigate until you die. You write up those papers and go on and let somebody else pick up. Right. That's what you do. And I don't know. I mean, I've got a lot of good answers. I've got a lot of examples where the Earth is flat and some where the Earth couldn't be flat. And I don't know. I mean, because I haven't seen, you know, I've seen pictures.
Sure.
But you know, Mark, I don't know. But it sure is fun stuff to talk about and think about. And one of these days, we might be talking in front of some people like we're doing now or at a conference, and we might accidentally make the statement that solves all the problems.
Maybe.
I mean, you know, that's really kind of how learning works. I mean, you know, you got people that think about this stuff, they keep doing research, and then all of a sudden, one of them says something that turns out to be the real truth. Not the truth, you know, what they call the truth, but the real truth.
Right.
There's two truths, the truth and the real truth. It's like, oh my goodness, like Billy the Kid.
Huh?
Oh God, I could talk to you for days about Billy the Kid. Well, one of my true heroes.
Nice.
We don't know what happened to him. I mean, do you know, and I'll say this, and I don't care who thinks what, his mortal enemy was who?
Billy the Kid?
Yep, it was Pat Garrett.
Yeah.
Who enabled Billy the Kid to escape?
Pat Garrett.
Yes. I think they were best friends and had the utmost respect for each other.
Sure.
And because, I mean, Billy the Kid should have been killed in the stairwell when he got out and he was running down it, and there were two guys there. Then all of a sudden, they got shot as they were putting their beat on him in the stairwell. Then they got shot. Now, I wonder who shot them. We don't have any proof or anything, but I got a sneaking suspicion. And Billy the Kid ran out. And he was gone. That's the real story. Because one of my very best friends is John LeMay, who is the ultimate historian on Billy the Kid. Mm-hmm. And he has been asked by the county of Lincoln, by Lincoln County in New Mexico, to write the story of Billy the Kid. And nobody better than John LeMay, because he knows more about it. He's done more research. And he agrees with me. He said, I can't put that in the book, John, But I agree. That's the real history. That's not history. That's the real history.
Nice.
But people wouldn't like that.
No.
And so you gotta remember we're telling the truth, not the real truth in
Right.
general. But anyway, I'll shut up. I just had to get that. Well, we have time for one more related question tonight.
Okay.
Well, okay, I think we actually kind of covered it. All right. According to we'll call it the Neil deGrasse Tyson theory.
Yeah.
The Earth's moving pretty fast.
Yeah.
It moves really fast around the sun,
Mm-hmm.
but the sun moves really fast. Thousands of miles a second.
Yeah.
And you compound that with the speed of the planets around the sun. And then you talk about the solar system's velocity going around, and I'm just amazed it hadn't hit another solar system.
Right.
That's just me. I'm just dumb old me from Morganton, North Carolina.
No.
But I'm asking one of those questions. Please tell me why we haven't hit something else, and tell me why they have declassified Pluto as a planet. And now they're beginning to think that there really is a planet X. Now, is that Elon Musk's planet?
No.
They're beginning to think that there is a ninth planet in an incredibly oblong orbit around our sun that we better be careful of, because that thing comes in the wrong way, it can just kill the Earth.
Sure.
And I mean, we don't know. And I think I'm not sure of these dates, but I'm pretty sure of this fact that a lot of psychics can see up to about 2550, and then they can't see anything else. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's not when Planet X is going to come in, and the Earth and Planet X are going to blow each other up, because they're going to be on the same path. But I mean, are you aware of that most psychics cannot see past 2550?
I am I am not aware of that. However, and I was with you. Excuse me. When it came to Nibiru, I was a big Nibiru guy back 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, when the movie 2012 with John Cusack came out in 2009, I was all over it. It's
God, we loved that movie.
Oh yeah, great movie. And I was part of the reason I kept prepping. It's like the whole Nibiru thing, and I was all over it. However, as the years came by, and 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, nothing happened. Now, is it possible that in the solar system model, at least the perceived one, the lights on the ceiling, there could be some sort of Planet X? I suppose. Back to your original question, yeah, the velocities that we're supposedly traveling through space are amazingly huge. Not only is the Earth spinning, on its axis at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, but it's traveling around the sun at 60,000 miles an hour. And the solar system is flying sideways like a shotgun pattern at 500,000 miles an hour, supposedly, through space. And the Milky Way galaxy that we're in is supposedly flying 2 million miles an hour in some direction that who cares?
And you know what? Yet I'm sitting here in my dining room. It is so calm and peaceful, and there's no notion of traveling zillions of miles an hour.
Right. And there's no notion that anything in the solar system is moving at all other than when we see the star trails at night. But none of those star trails, here's the interesting thing for those that are listening. Look up the constellations of the zodiac. You know what's never changed? The constellations of the zodiac. No stars. If you guys know what parallax is, meaning if you have a star that's 10 light years away and another one that's 2,000 light years away, sooner or later, the perspective, those stars are going to cross in the sky from the way we look. When you're driving on a road, parallax is the mailbox go by really fast, the telephone poles go slower, and the mountains in the distance go even slower, go very, very slow. No stars ever cross paths in the sky, even with all these weird velocities that we're traveling at. How's that happen? Why has the zodiac never changed in thousands of years? Even though we've been, imagine the speeds that we're traveling now multiplied by thousands of years. And I know science will be like, oh no, we can detect like fractions of an inch, blah, blah. It's like, really? I don't see it. I don't see it anywhere. So even though I'd love to keep believing in Nibiru, that ship came and went. Nothing happened. I love the whole Mayan concept. I was enamored with it. I thought it was great. But I kind of joked over the last few years. I go, if all of a sudden, you guys want to watch a great Planet X movie, which no one had watched, watch Melancholia. The second half of that movie is Planet X showing up, and it is just freaking wild. But if all of a sudden Planet X did show up, in the daytime sky, I would go outside and I would stare up. And it's like, what took you so long? Where have you been for the last 10? Why was everybody off for so long? So yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in it anymore. Nibiru was my I got into flat Earth in 2015. So when flat Earth came around, the Nibiru thing that was my official. I am done with it. So there you go.
Okay. Well, that's great. And we've had a wonderful time tonight. We took our one question about what is the firmament, and we wove it into other questions, and I've had a blast. I always have a great time when you're on. And we've got one more, and we're going to have Jessica Jones, the great remote viewer, and she knows she's going to be tasked with something on the show. She's not going to be lying. She's going to have to come forth with whatever she thinks.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be cool. So I'll be posting this, of course, on
if you don't mind me, I can add something, because I've known a couple of remote viewers in my life. And in fact, I knew some remote viewers that got into flat Earth. And if you believe how things are designed, before they got into flat Earth, they remote viewed a globe. But after they got into flat Earth, they never saw the globe again. Once they came over to our side of the fence, which kind of makes sense, because, remote viewers have been around for a while. And you would think that objectively they would run into it, unless the reality that built this place affects them as well. You know what I mean? Cover all your bases. It's like, you make sure the remote viewers don't see the truth unless they want to see the truth. Just my thoughts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. And we'll be back in a couple of days with our post-Christmas show with our remote viewer, Jessica Jones. She's going to be phenomenal. You will be phenomenal as well. And I'll be here manning the helm, and we're going to have so much fun on the prelude for the 2025 Flat Earth Conference in Georgia. Because if it ain't good enough for Georgia, it's not good enough for anywhere. And I love Georgia. And I think it'll be a blast. So anyway, thanks a lot for being here tonight. Mark Sargent from Colorado, Washington.
Nope. Seattle.
No, Washington.
Washington, yeah.
State, yeah.
Yeah.
Seattle. They still have the Space Needle?
Of course. It's from the World's Fair in 1962. They're not getting rid of that.
Oh, yeah. So thanks a lot, Mark. It was great. Have a good evening. Have a very Merry Christmas. And we'll see you shortly after Christmas on the one and only. You know what? There's only one Scarycast. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Not every day is an adventure, but with Honda, we're putting a little adventure in every day. At Bianchi Honda, the rates are dropping and the deals are popping. Lease the fun-to-drive 2025 Honda HR-V Sport with all-wheel drive for $279 a month. Or lease the adventurous 2025 Honda CR-V LX with all-wheel drive for just $299 a month. Lock in your deal today at Bianchi Honda.
36-month, 10,000 miles per year closed-end lease with $29.99 due at signing for 2025 HRV Sport all-wheel drive or $39.99 due at signing for 2025 CRV LX all-wheel drive. Must qualify for a college grad program and military appreciation offer. Excludes tax, license, title, and dealer fees with approved credit through HFS. Option to purchase at lease end for $19,532.50 for 2025 HRV Sport all-wheel drive or $20,758.50 for 2025 CRV LX all-wheel drive. Expires 12/2/2024.
Hey, still listening? Max and I invite you to see our new state-of-the-art dealership. Stop in soon.